My name is Lillian Slusher, 32 years old. The invitation arrived like a subpoena family meeting. Sunday, 2 p.m., subject line, important discussion. All must attend. My sister Emily had sent it 3 weeks ago, as if we were board members of a company called Disappointment, instead of relatives bound by blood and silent judgment. I arrived 10 minutes early out of habit. My parents' living room in Evanston hadn't changed in years. The blue porcelain cookie plate, the smell of lemon polish. Dad's throne-like leather chair angled toward the rest of us. The grandfather clock ticked loud enough to remind me I was back on their time. Emily swept in precisely at 2, her daughter tugging at her sleeve. My brother David followed late, as always, carrying his air of corporate importance. Then Mom called from the kitchen, her voice bright but tense. "We're just waiting on you, Lillian." I took a seat opposite Dad. His fingers tapped the armrest, a habit I'd known since childhood. It was his way of saying, "I'm in charge here." When everyone had settled, he cleared his throat. "We need to discuss Lillian." The words hit like an echo of every previous discussion. Same tone, same setup, different version of my supposed failure. Emily folded her hands. "We're not attacking you," she began gently, her smile rehearsed. "We're just worried." About what I asked. David was already scrolling on his phone, probably notes. "Let's see," he said, his voice calm, clinical. "Dropped out of Northwestern after 2 years. I left to start a company," I reminded him. "Which failed. Within 18 months, he continued ignoring me. Then there was your e-commerce venture, made good money, but you walked away from it. Then the consulting thing you run from home." I could practically see the quotation marks around run. Mom chimed in, her voice soft and weaponized. "Honey, we just don't see stability. At your age." 32, David inserted. At 32, she corrected, "You should be thinking about long-term goals, retirement property, health insurance." Dad leaned forward. "Let's be clear. You're not a failure because we dislike your choices. You're a failure because they don't lead anywhere real." The air thickened. I could smell the coffee cooling on the table. I looked from face to face. People who claimed to know me better than anyone yet had no idea who I'd become. "I have clients," I said evenly. "Employees. Revenue." "How many employees?" Mom asked like she was checking a child's math homework. 83. They blinked. Then Emily laughed nervously. "That can't be right. You work from home." "I do. My team's remote, 7 countries. Dad gave a short laugh. "So they're imaginary employees in imaginary countries. Lillian, that's not a real business. That's you playing CEO with a laptop." Something inside me flickered, anger maybe, but it didn't surface. I'd rehearsed this scene in my mind 100 times. "Then what is a real business, Dad? Suits and cubicles?" "It's structure," he snapped. "It's hierarchy, predictability. You think passion is enough to build a life. Passion doesn't pay the bills." "It has so far." David looked at me with pity disguised as logic. "Look, my company's hiring. Mid-level project management. $185,000 base. Benefits. I can put in a word." I smiled faintly. "No thanks." Dad slammed his palm against the armrest. "You see pride? That's your problem. You'd rather chase fantasies than accept real opportunities." Mom's tone turned final. "Your father and I have decided we're cutting you off financially. No more co-signed leases, no more safety net." My pulse didn't change. "Okay." Emily blinked. "Okay, that's all." "What else do you want me to say? You've made your decision. I respect it." Mom's voice wavered. "Without our help, you'll need a real job, Lillian." "That's the idea, isn't it?" I stood picking up my bag. Dad rose too, face red with frustration. "You think you're smarter than everyone else. You think the world will just hand you success." "I don't think it'll hand me anything," I said quietly. "I've been earning it." His laugh was bitter. "You'll wake up 40 years old with nothing but failed ideas." "Maybe," I said, "but they'll be my ideas." Mom stood trembling. "We're doing this because we love you." "I know," I said. "You love me. You just don't believe in me. Those two things can coexist." I walked to the door, the grandfather clock ticking behind me like a countdown to freedom. As I stepped into the crisp September air, the weight of the house lifted off my chest. They thought they'd stripped me of security. What they didn't realize was that I'd outgrown their version of it years ago. They still saw me as the girl who'd failed too many times to count. They had no idea that the next morning the entire world would know my name for something far greater. The drive home to Lincoln Park took 20 minutes, though it felt longer not because of traffic, but because of the silence that followed me like a ghost. No music, no radio, just the hum of the city against the windows. Chicago's skyline shimmered in the distance, its towers catching the evening light. Somewhere among them, my company's clients were preparing for Monday's board meetings, unaware that their quiet consultant had just been cut off by her own family. When I parked, I sat in the car for a full minute before getting out. The air smelled faintly of rain. I checked my phone, 17 missed calls from Emily. I didn't open them. I already knew the tone. We love you, but... Inside my apartment, the stillness felt different. Not lonely, but earned. I dropped my keys onto the marble counter and powered up my laptop. The screen flickered to life with a dozen Slack notifications. My team was awake across time zones. Anita, Singapore. Client 12 approved Phase 2 budget. Congrats, boss. Marco, Berlin. Finishing the investor deck. Sent you revisions. Layla, Dubai. Morning, Lillian, new lead from Microsoft referral. My lips curved into a faint smile. 83 employees, 7 countries. A business they still called Pretend. On my wall hung a corkboard covered in index cards, my system of control. Every card represented a client, startups, SaaS firms, early-stage tech companies. The kind of names my father used to worship from the pages of the Wall Street Journal. I stared at the board and thought about how many times I'd almost quit, the nights I'd worked until dawn, the deals that had fallen apart hours before signing, the constant fight to be taken seriously as a woman in rooms full of men who assumed I was someone's assistant. And still I'd built it brick by invisible brick. I opened my email. There it was, a subject line that made my heart skip even after all the meetings and milestones. Subject Forbes, final proof plus publication date, confirmation. I clicked. Dear Ms. Slusher, we're pleased to confirm your Forbes Under 40 feature goes live tomorrow, 6:00 a.m. EST. Thank you for your cooperation during our verification process. Attached are the final photo selections and article layout. Congratulations again. Attached 6 glossy photos, the ones from last month's shoot. Me in a navy blazer, arms crossed, city skyline behind me. Professional, sharp, a little lonely. Tomorrow, my name would be everywhere. Forbes' most powerful entrepreneur under 40. And my family would see it before breakfast. I closed the laptop, slowly leaning back in my chair. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 years ago, I'd left Northwestern because a professor told me I had the kind of mind that could build something world-changing if I had the courage to stop waiting for permission. He'd been right. I glanced at the photo on my desk, Professor Chin smiling beside me on graduation day. That never happened. I'd dropped out 2 months before that photo was taken, but she'd shown up anyway, told me I didn't need a degree to prove my worth. I whispered, "You were the only one who believed me." Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the lake. I watched the raindrops start to tap against the window, each one like the steady pulse of a coming storm. For years, I'd dreamed of the moment when the world would finally see what I'd built, not for fame, not even for revenge, but for truth. To prove, if only to myself, that I hadn't been crazy to believe in my vision. Now that moment was hours away. I made tea, the same jasmine blend my mom used to brew on Sundays, and sat on the couch with my laptop open to tomorrow's article. My face looked strange on the screen, confident, maybe even powerful. But behind that image was the same girl who used to sit in that same living room, being told she was wasting her potential. I wondered what they'd say when they saw this headline. Would they think it was exaggerated? Would they even believe it? Probably not. Not until someone else told them it was true. The clock struck midnight. Rain blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and blue. I closed the laptop, set the cup down, and whispered to the quiet room, "Tomorrow they'll finally know." Then, almost as an afterthought, I added softly, "But it won't change a thing." I woke before dawn, not from an alarm, but from instinct, the kind that develops after years of chasing time zones and deadlines. The city outside my window was still half asleep, the park below wrapped in a thin veil of mist. My phone buzzed once, twice, then continuously until the sound blurred into a low hum. Tara, head of communications. "It's live." Forbes link attached. I opened it. There it was, my face staring back from the homepage of Forbes. The headline bold and unreal even to me. Meet Forbes' most powerful entrepreneur under 40. How Lillian Slusher built a $200 million consulting empire in silence. The article stretched across 3 pages, 500 words of validation that I hadn't asked for but somehow needed. My story rewritten by strangers, but finally believed. Quotes from CEOs I'd coached through near collapse, charts proving what I'd whispered to my family for years. I scrolled down slowly, half detached, half trembling. She's the consultant billionaires call when they're stuck. Working with Lillian isn't just about growth, it's about transformation. The words didn't make me proud. They made me tired, the good kind of tired, the kind that says you did it even when no one thought you could. Within minutes, messages began flooding in. Client, Silicon Tech CEO. Front page. Congratulations, Lillian. Long overdue. CNBC producer. Would you be available for an interview this week? LinkedIn notification. You're trending under hashtag Forbes influential. I let them stack up. My laptop pinged every few seconds. Then came the quieter, more personal ones. College friend. Holy crap, Lillian. I used to copy your homework. Guess I should have copied your entire life plan. Old roommate. Still remember you working through nights. You deserve this. Each message filled me with something between gratitude and disbelief. But beneath it all was one persistent absent silence from my family. I kept working. Conference call at 9:00 a.m. Crisis management strategy for a client at 10:00, 3 media requests by noon. Every time I checked my phone, the same thing, no calls, no texts from home. By 2:00 p.m., the feature had been shared over 40,000 times. The Forbes homepage banner now read, "The secret architect of tech's greatest turnarounds." That's when the first call came. Emily. I let it go to voicemail. Then David, then Mom, then finally Dad. One after another like dominoes. The messages started pouring in seconds later. Emily, Lillian, please call me. We need to talk. David, is this article real? Call me back immediately. Mom. Honey, there's something on the news about you. I'm confused. Please call. Dad. We need to discuss this Forbes situation. Situation. The word made me laugh out loud, sharp and humorless. At 5:00 p.m., my building's front desk called. Miss Slusher, there are some people here to see you, the concierge said. They say they're your family. My stomach sank not from fear, but from inevitability. Tell them I'm unavailable. Pause. They're quite insistent, ma'am. Of course they were. I exhaled long and slow. Send them up. 3 minutes later, a soft knock echoed through my apartment. When I opened the door, the sight almost startled me. Dad stood at the front, shoulders stiff, but eyes uneasy. Not the commanding professor who used to dominate every conversation. Emily beside him, still clutching her phone like a shield. David looked pale hollow, as if his certainty had been stripped away. Mom, her lips trembling, eyes already wet. Lillian, she said, voice quivering. We've been trying to reach you all day. I noticed I said simply, I've been working. Dad's voice broke the tension. There's an article with your picture. I know. Emily stepped forward, incredulous. You know, Lillian, it says you run a $200 million firm. $200 million in client value created, I corrected. The company valuation is different. David pulled out his phone, hand shaking slightly. My CEO sent the article to our entire executive team. Lillian, is this all real? Yes. Silence. The kind that exposes a lifetime of disbelief. Mom finally whispered, When did this happen? Over the past 10 years, I said evenly. The same 10 years you all thought I was failing. They stared at me, 4 people who'd built their entire understanding of me around the idea that I was small, now faced with proof that I wasn't. Dad rubbed his temple. The article says you've worked with Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and you never told us. I tried, I said. You didn't believe me. Emily's lips parted, her voice breaking. Lillian, we had no idea. I know. David's jaw tightened. You could have shown us. Proof. Something tangible. I told you I had clients. Employees. Growth. You wanted tax returns. I met his eyes. You didn't want proof. You wanted control. No one spoke. The ticking of my wall clock was the only sound. Finally, Dad said quietly, We'd like to talk. Properly. I gestured toward the living room. Then, come in. As they stepped inside, the energy shifted. For the first time in my life, they entered my space not as judges, but as guests. And I intended to make sure they remembered the difference. They stood just inside the doorway, unsure where to sit. It was strange to see them there, the same family that once debated my life failures, now staring at walls lined with framed awards and quiet proof of everything they'd refused to believe. My apartment wasn't grand, but it radiated calm power, minimalist decor, soft gray walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Every corner reflected the years I'd spent building a world of my own. Mom's eyes darted to a glass shelf. "You have trophies," she said softly. "From business associations?" I smiled faintly. "Mostly industry recognitions. Growth awards. Forbes sent one last week, actually." Dad's gaze landed on a photo of me shaking hands with a CEO at a global summit. He frowned, as though the image were evidence in a case he'd lost. "You met with good God, is that—" "Yes," I interrupted. "We worked together on a restructuring strategy last year." Emily was holding her phone, scrolling furiously. "It says here, your firm helped 23 Fortune 500 companies. 25 now." David sank into the couch, exhaling hard. "I can't process this. 10 years of thinking you were barely getting by." "I never asked you to think anything," I said quietly. "You chose to." Mom sat down across from me, hands clasped. "Honey, why didn't you tell us? We would have been so proud." I gave a small, humorless laugh. "You mean if Forbes told you first?" Dad looked at me sharply. "That's not fair. Isn't it yesterday you said I wasn't living in the real world? That I'd end up 40 with nothing? And today, I'm a headline." His lips parted, but no words came. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Lillian, we were just scared for you. You always sounded so confident. We thought you were bluffing. Because you couldn't imagine a version of success that didn't look like yours." The room went still. Outside, the evening traffic rumbled faintly, a reminder that life beyond this apartment went on, indifferent to our reckoning. David rubbed his jaw. "The article says your company valuation's at $127 million. That can't be accurate." "It's a conservative estimate." He blinked. "So you're saying—" "I'm saying I stopped measuring my worth by your approval a long time ago." For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the distant city siren below. Dad finally broke the silence. His voice, once commanding, was almost fragile. "I don't know what to say." "You could start with, 'I was wrong,'" I said. He looked up startled, then sighed. "I was wrong. I didn't expect the sting that followed. After years of wanting that admission hearing, it now felt hollow." Mom reached out her fingers, trembling. "We love you, Lillian. We always did." "I know you did, but love without belief is just pity." Emily covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. "I feel sick. We laughed at you yesterday. We called you reckless. And the whole time you were—" "Building," I said gently. "That's all I was ever doing." Dad sank into the armchair opposite me, the same posture he'd taken yesterday, only this time in my home. "You said you have 83 employees. That's not symbolic, is it?" I smiled faintly. "No, it's 87 now. We hired 4 new analysts this week." The disbelief on their faces almost made me pity them. "Almost," Mom whispered. "How could we have been so blind?" "Because you never looked," I replied softly. "You were too busy trying to fix me to notice I'd already fixed myself." A long silence followed. Then David asked, almost childlike, "Why didn't you show us sooner? We might have understood." "You wouldn't have," I said simply. "You needed proof you couldn't deny. That's why you believe me now, because Forbes told you to." Dad stared at the floor, shoulders sagging. "The truth is, I mocked what I didn't understand." "That's all any of you did." He nodded slowly. "And now I finally understand what it cost you to keep building while everyone you loved doubted you." I leaned back, folding my arms. "It cost me everything except myself." Mom's breath hitched, and for a moment I almost softened. But years of silence had hardened something inside me. Emily wiped her cheeks. "Lillian, please, tell us how to make this right." "I don't know if you can." Dad lifted his head. "We can try." "Then start by listening." I said, my tone calm but firm. "No more lectures. No more pretending you know what's best for me. Just listen." They nodded slowly, as if learning a language for the first time. For the first time in my life, they were quiet. Truly quiet. The kind of silence that comes after something breaks and maybe, just maybe, begins to rebuild. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything that had gone unsaid for a decade. Outside, the last orange light of the sunset bled through the windows, catching the edges of their faces. Guilt, regret, disbelief. My family had never looked so human. Mom was the first to break. Her voice was small, shaking. "You have to understand. We thought we were helping. We just didn't want you to fail again." "I didn't fail," I said quietly. "You just couldn't recognize success that didn't come with a company badge and a pension plan." Emily sniffled, her voice brittle. "I don't know what hurts more, realizing we didn't believe in you, or realizing we didn't even try to." David leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Lillian, I'll admit it. I mocked you because I envied you. You had freedom. I've been in the same office for 12 years, taking orders from people half as smart as you. That confession hit differently. For a moment, the tension wavered. Then why didn't you just say that? I asked softly. He laughed bitterly. Because Dad taught us that envy is weakness, and I already felt small enough. Dad looked up sharply, his eyes flickering with guilt. I taught you discipline, stability. You taught us fear, David countered. Fear of anything that doesn't look like you. The words hung there heavy and true. I watched my father, the man who'd built his life on authority, suddenly stripped of it. His jaw clenched, but when he finally spoke, his voice cracked. I wanted to protect you, he said. All of you. The world isn't kind to dreamers. I thought if I could push you toward something safe, you'd be spared the pain of disappointment. Except I said you became the disappointment. He flinched, but he didn't argue. Mom reached for his hand. We were wrong, she whispered. Both of us. We confuse love with control. I exhaled slowly. It was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever heard from them. Emily wiped her face, her voice trembling. We should have trusted you. You were always the bold one, even when we laughed at your ideas. I still remember when you tried to build that homemade website in high school. I chuckled softly despite myself. The one Dad said would never work. Dad rubbed his forehead. You made $600 from that thing. 628. I corrected automatically, and for a split second we all smiled, a flicker of warmth among ruins. Then Mom's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced down, then gasped. Lillian, you're on the news. I leaned forward as she played the clip, a local station's evening segment. Chicago consultant Lillian Slusher, recently named Forbes' most influential entrepreneur under 40, has become the talk of the tech world. Her firm, Slusher Strategies, quietly built a $200 million empire advising global corporations on growth and innovation. The TV anchor's voice was calm, factual, reverent. They showed my headshot, the Forbes cover, then a video clip of one of my clients, a gray-haired CEO, saying Lillian saved our company from collapse. She sees patterns no one else does. Emily covered her mouth, tears spilling again. They're calling you a genius. Dad just stared at the screen, face unreadable. When the segment ended, I turned the TV off. Satisfied. No, Dad said, his tone soft, broken, ashamed. He stood and paced toward the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. I've spent my whole life teaching business theory. I wrote about leadership, about vision, about strategy, and my own daughter lived it right in front of me, and I couldn't see it. Because it didn't fit your textbook, I said gently. He nodded slowly. Because it didn't fit me. Mom wiped her cheeks. We're so sorry, honey. You have no idea how much. I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, I saw not the critic, but the frightened mother beneath the perfectionism. I believe you're sorry, I said quietly. But sorry doesn't erase the years you made me doubt myself. Emily sniffled. What can we do? Please tell us how to make this right. I shook my head. You can't fix what you never built. You can only start over if you're willing to see me as I really am. David exhaled, running a hand through his hair. That's fair. We owe you that. There was a pause. Then Mom stood and crossed the room toward me. Can I hug you? For a moment I froze, instinctively guarded. Then I nodded. Her arms wrapped around me, shaking with sobs. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I should have said it sooner. Emily joined, then David. The three of them held on to me, crying quietly, murmuring apologies I'd waited years to hear. When they finally stepped back, Dad was still by the window, his reflection framed against the skyline. Dad, I said softly. He turned and I saw tears, actual tears. I'm proud of you, he said simply, and I'm sorry for not seeing who you were. I wanted to protect you from failure, but all I did was become the reason you had to succeed in silence. The lump in my throat surprised me. For the first time, I saw not the judge, but the man who finally realized the cost of his pride. Thank you, I whispered. The clock on the wall ticked into the pause that followed. It was the sound of something fragile and rare honesty, finally spoken aloud. They left around 9 p.m., each one walking out of my apartment slower than they had entered. None of them looked back, but I could feel the weight of their silence, a silence filled with apologies that had come too late. When the door clicked shut behind them, I stood still for a long moment, listening to the echo fade. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass. My reflection stared back at me, calm, unreadable, tired, but steady. I'd dreamt of this moment for years, the day my family would finally see me. Yet now that it had arrived, the victory felt hollow. They believed in me because the world told them to, not because they'd found faith on their own. I moved to the window and watched the street below, cars sliding past strangers hurrying home, Life going on exactly as before. Everything outside was ordinary, and that somehow was comforting. My phone vibrated on the counter. CNBC producer. Lillian, we'd love to have you on air this week. Bloomberg. Congratulations on the Forbes feature. Are you available for an exclusive BBC World requesting interview? Topic: Women Redefining Leadership. I smiled faintly and typed back to my communications lead. Schedule them. Let's also start vetting those 63 companies on the wait list. Her reply came seconds later. Already on it, boss. I closed my laptop and leaned against the counter. My empire, the thing they'd dismissed as a laptop and a dream, was alive, breathing, growing faster than I could sometimes handle. And yet a strange ache lingered. Because success didn't erase the years of not being believed. It just made them visible. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. Unknown. Saw the Forbes cover. Always knew you'd make it big. Proud of you. Professor Chin. A smile tugged at my lips. Me, thank you. Your class changed my life. Prophet Chin, no. Your courage did. I just reminded you it was there. I stared at that message for a long time. The woman who'd once told me to stop asking for permission was right again. Outside, the rain from earlier had cleared. The city skyline gleamed under the half-moon, quiet and confident, like it didn't owe anyone an explanation for shining. Then another text came in, this time from Dad. Dad, your mother and I want to take you to dinner, a proper celebration. Your choice of restaurant. I stared at the message until it blurred slightly in my vision. For a second, the old part of me, the girl who used to crave his approval, almost typed, yes. Instead, I wrote, let me check my schedule, I'll let you know. I set the phone down beside the Forbes magazine that had arrived in print that afternoon. My face looked back at me from the glossy cover, confident, composed, no trace of the girl they once pitied. I picked it up, tracing the embossed gold letters, most influential entrepreneur under 40. For a moment, I remembered that living room, the ticking clock, my father's voice saying, you'll wake up at 40 with nothing to show for it. And here I was, 32, with everything to show and nothing left to prove. I returned to my desk where tomorrow's calendar was already packed, client calls, media appearances, strategy sessions. My life was full, relentless, and entirely mine. I took a deep breath and looked around my apartment one last time before turning off the lights. They believed me now, but it didn't matter, because I no longer needed them to. I had learned to build faith out of doubt, confidence out of rejection, and love on my own terms. The skyline outside shimmered brighter as the city exhaled, and for the first time in years, I felt something deeper than pride, peace. I wasn't playing entrepreneur. I was one. I didn't need their belief, I needed my own.